For more than half a century, one name has pretty much defined the idea of the unsolvable case in American true crime, the Zodiac. This was a killer who didn't just murder people, he created a whole persona. He terrorized Northern California, played this twisted game with the police and the press, and then he just vanished. Today, we're going to try and unpack the cold case that simply refuses to die.
For 51 years, these were just a bunch of meaningless symbols, a taunt from the Zodiac Killer, locked away in one of his most complicated ciphers. But then, in 2020, someone finally read it. After decades of complete silence, it was like the Zodiac was speaking from beyond the grave.
I mean, this was the moment, right? The breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. This was the one puzzle that even the pros at the FBI and the CIA couldn't crack. So you have to wonder, what secrets did it hold? After all that time, did we finally get his name? But here's the thing. The people who finally solved it, it wasn't some secret government agency or a squad of hardened detectives. Nope. The breakthrough actually came from a worldwide effort by 3 regular guys, 3 private citizens who were just hooked by the challenge of the puzzle itself. Just think about that for a second. 1969 to 2020. That is an incredible 51-year gap. A coded message just sat there in an evidence locker, a taunt completely frozen in time while the entire world changed around it. It just goes to show you how stubborn this mystery really is. And you gotta give these guys their credit. David Orenchek, an American software engineer. Sam Blake, a mathematician from Australia. And Jarl van Eyck, a programmer from Belgium. This international team built their own custom software and ran it through something like 650,000 different possibilities to finally crack this thing. It was a total needle in a haystack problem, and they actually found the needle. So after all that incredible work, what was their reward? Well, honestly, total frustration. The message wasn't a confession. It didn't have a name. It was just more of the Zodiac's massive ego. He basically says, that guy on the TV show wasn't me. And then he doubles down on his sick fantasy, that he isn't afraid to die because all his victims will be his slaves in paradise. Yeah, with his classic misspelling and all. Okay, so the cracked code gives us a little peek into his twisted mind. But to really understand the kind of fear this guy created, we have to rewind the clock. Let's go back to the late 1960s, when this wave of brutal, totally random attacks just gripped Northern California. Let's start with the official number, 5. 5 confirmed murder victims. 5 people whose lives were just cut short by a killer who seemed to think murder was some kind of sport. And then there's this number, 2. That's how many people looked this killer in the eye, or at least at his strange hooded costume, and somehow lived to tell the tale. 2 survivors who had to carry that horror with them for the rest of their lives. You know, his MO was terrifyingly predictable at first. He'd find young couples parked in these remote, isolated spots, places like Lake Herman Road or Blue Rock Springs. Then, bam, under the cover of darkness, he'd attack. But then at Lake Berryessa, he totally changed it up. He showed up wearing this bizarre, full-on executioner's hood before stabbing a couple in broad daylight. The one constant, though, after every attack, he made damn sure everyone knew it was him. And this is how he did it. The letters. This is what separated him from other killers and turned him into a legend. He'd mail these letters directly to newspapers, and they were filled with details that only the real killer could possibly know. He taunted the police, he threatened to kill again, and he signed every single one with his iconic symbol, a crosshair, like you'd see in a rifle scope. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a brand. But then, the whole game changed on October 11th, 1969. The Zodiac came out of the remote lovers' lanes and into the heart of the city. He murdered a cab driver named Paul Stein in a wealthy San Francisco neighborhood. I mean, this was such a brazen attack in a populated area, it cranked up the investigation to a whole new level. It also led to a huge mistake by police, and the best look anyone ever got at the killer. So this is the face that has haunted this case for decades. After the Stein murder, a few teenagers who saw the killer leaving the scene gave a description, which led to this composite sketch. But here's the absolutely crazy part. Moments after the murder, patrol officers actually stopped and talked to a man matching this exact description just a few blocks away. But they let him go. Why? Because the dispatcher had mistakenly said the suspect was black. They had him. They literally talked to the Zodiac and just let him walk off into the... With thousands of tips and potential suspects, the whole investigation just felt impossible.
But there was this one name that kept popping up, over and over again. A man whose life was just this bizarre collection of coincidences and circumstantial evidence that seemed way too strong to ignore. Arthur Lee Allen. And this, right here, is why this case is so incredibly maddening. On one hand, the case against Allen looks really, really strong. The guy wore a watch made by the Zodiac watch company with the same name and symbol. A friend told cops that Allen had talked about hunting people with a flashlight on his gun years before the murders even started. He was even found near one of the murder scenes with bloody knives in his car. But on the other hand, none of the hard evidence ever matched. Not his handwriting, not his fingerprints, not his DNA. It was this mountain of suspicion with absolutely zero solid proof. So if the forensic trail on Arthur Lee Allen just went completely cold, what's left? Well, what about the killer's other challenges? After that one big cipher was cracked, everyone, investigators and amateur sleuths alike, turned their attention back to the puzzles that are still unsolved, even now. It's a totally fair question, isn't it? I mean, we live in an age of AI and supercomputers. Why can't we just plug these last few ciphers into some machine and have it spit out the answer? Well, the reality of code breaking, it turns out, is a little trickier than that. And that quote really gets to the heart of the problem. You see, the Zodiac's "My Name Is" cipher is only 13 characters long. Because it's so short, you can make the math work for literally thousands of different names and phrases. One codebreaker published a list of over 1,000 possible names that fit the pattern. So even if his real name is in that list, there's just no way to know which one is the right one. The problem isn't that you can't find a solution, it's that you can find way too many. So where does all this leave us? We've got a cracked code that told us nothing new, a prime suspect who could never be proven guilty, and these other puzzles that might just be mathematically impossible to solve for good. What we're left with is the chilling legacy of the case itself. And this right here shows you the terrifying gap at the center of his legacy. Officially, police can tie him to 5 murders. But in his letters, the Zodiac bragged about a body count of 37. So was he just lying to make himself sound more terrifying? Or are there dozens of other victims out there whose murders had just never been connected to him? We just don't know. This quote from a veteran reporter at the Chronicle, the very newspaper the Zodiac sent his letters to, it really says it all. You've got the brutal crimes, the brain-teaser ciphers, the direct taunting of the public and the police, and then the fact that he just stopped. It all came together to create this modern American boogeyman, kind of our very own Jack the Ripper. And that's really what it all comes down to, isn't it? After all these decades, all the investigators, all the books and movies and internet sleuths, the one thing the killer himself promised to reveal, his name, remains his last defiant secret. Over 50 years later, the ghost of the Zodiac is still out there, his identity a giant question mark that we may never, ever be able to fill.